Welcome back to my prayer room slash office slash storage room, apparently. Oh, multifaceted room. It's a beautiful thing, I suppose. So, hey, this is the third installment of this mini vlog series I'm doing about coming alive with Jesus, getting the invitation to just come alive with him, and then entering into the messy transformation zone, or the zone that can be messy at times. And I want to encourage you, if you've missed the first couple of videos in this series, there's only been 2 so far, I encourage you to go to jesseberkey.com and just give those a quick view. That's jesseberkey.com. I'm going to snag me a graphic one of these days. So, as I mentioned, the first one was about the invitation to come alive with Jesus, and the second one is about the transformation zone. And then this one is going to be about coming from the other side. Like, what's it like to be on the other side, having come through the transformation process, and being positioned even in the promised land, maybe 1 foot in, 2 feet in, whatever it looks like, whatever that is in each unique situation, but to be there and to be able to look back on some things and to say, that's what we came through, and what is it like to live in that? And actually, my good friend Jeremy Mangersheen is releasing a book about that very thing. And it's going to be about what you do when you know you're free. What do you do then? Like, what's the next step? And how do you live that way? And I was thinking about this, and my wife and I have been doing a workout series called 21 Day Fix. And the lead instructor of this series, she likes to say, fitness is a journey, not a destination. And I was thinking about that, and thinking about the process of coming alive with Jesus and chasing his heart and just being transformed into his image daily. And I'm wondering, is it the same? Is it similar? Is it a journey, or is it a destination? And I was also thinking about how she also likes to say, hate me today and love me tomorrow. And I'm thinking, I kind of want to hate you both days. When I'm in the midst of that lower body workout, I'm like, nah, I just don't like you at all. Yay, come alive with Jesus, bitterness, yeah. Anyway, so what does it look like on the other side? What is journey and this destination? And I actually think that it's both. I think that we could apply both words to it, or both facets to it. In some ways it's a destination, and in some ways it's a journey. There are certainly things that we can feel like we've reached a destination on, so to speak. But what about, how is it a journey in our lives? What about knowing Jesus? What about knowing the Father? Do we ever feel like we have arrived at the final place in doing that? I haven't. You know, I've only been around for 33 years. But I can't imagine coming to a place to where I've discovered everything that there is to know about God. And we have an eternity to do that. And I'm not even sure that we'll ever be able to do that, even though the invitation is for us to be able to do that. I think that that's a journey. Living in freedom is a journey, I think. And learning how to daily walk out freedom in the areas which we were previously held in bondage to. So some of those things I think is a journey. But what about the destination? Like, where can we set our feet and look back and say, we've come through there. We know what it feels like to be in chains and be in bondage in that. And now looking at where we are now today, you know, what does that look like? And I think that we can experience some of that destination satisfaction in a few areas of freedom. What about arriving at the place that we don't believe anymore that God merely tolerates us? The way we used to think, that God merely tolerates us. What about not believing that anymore? What about finding identity in temporary, unstable things? Are we still doing that, or have we come to a place where we're finding our identity in Christ alone? What about thinking we have no power and authority over the kingdom of darkness? Have we arrived at a place to where we have discovered that, yes, we do in fact have power and authority over the kingdom of darkness and over the rulers and principalities of the agents of this present age that are trying to afflict us and oppress us? Do we still believe that we're powerless against that? What about self-hate, guilt, condemnation, and depression? Are we still just wrapped up in that? Can we arrive at a place to where we're no longer depressed? We're no longer living in depression. We're no longer living in self-hatred. We're no longer living in guilt and shame and condemnation. What about things like bitterness? Do we always have to live in this burning rage inside of us? Or can we actually arrive at a place to where we don't even remember what that feels like anymore? Or maybe we remember what it feels like, but it feels like another lifetime. Can we discover how to walk with an unoffendable heart and to walk away from bitterness and to walk into forgiveness? Can we overcome fear? Or do we have to remain fear and anxiety ridden? Can we get to a place to where we have run into the perfect love of God to the extent that fear has been vanquished from our lives? And the chains of trauma, I mean, this traumatic, emotional, physical trauma that has happened to many of us over the course of our lives. Do we have to be held by the chains of that? Do we have to be stuck in that? Or can we position ourselves and arrive in the promised land and look back on that and say, yeah, that was a trial and that was a hard time in our lives, but we're on the other side. And now from this place of freedom, we can look and we can point to where God had showed us the way through the wilderness, and that we didn't have to circle the same mountain anymore, that we got off of that old beaten path and we forged ahead to the path that Jesus was blazing in front of us, and we found that there was another option. I mean, what is it in your life? You know, have you arrived at a destination point in those areas, in other areas? I think that it is. I think that it's possible to arrive at a destination in some of those areas. I was spending some time with the Lord one morning a few months ago. We were actually doing a Project Afterlife shoot in some state. I don't even remember where now. But I remember very clearly I was spending some time with the Lord, and I was just reflecting on how opening my mouth and being obedient and just spreading His words of love as He led was becoming more normal to me than not doing it. Like the fear or the resistance, I guess I would say, to keeping it to myself and not ministering His love to somebody as He was leading me would be unusual now for me. And I was just reflecting on that. I'm like, God, how did I get here? And He said, and he told me, He said, your natural lifestyle is changing. It's being conformed into the image of Jesus. It's being conformed into the lifestyle of Jesus. And you know, when we're pursuing the heart of the Lord, I think that sometimes these things just happen and we don't even recognize it. That's what it looks like on the other side. That's what it looks like in the Promised Land. There was a local pastor who asked me one morning to share a story of how I had felt the burn of hatred and I had chosen love instead. And so I sat there and I was like, man, the last time that I really remember burning with hatred was before I had my encounter with Jesus and before I started into the transformation process, before I came alive with Him. And the problem with that is that when I felt that way back in that time, I responded in hate. And I'm like, I don't think that's the story you're looking for. If you want to, you know, a story of how I felt the burn of hatred and I responded in hate, I got plenty of those. Let's throw some of those around. It's not going to help anybody, you know, but we can throw some stories like that around, because I got a list. I got a list, brother. Broseph. We could talk about some stuff. But I did actually, I thought of one. But you know, even in that specific situation, I just didn't experience the burn. It's like when you reach the Promised Land in the area of forgiveness, the desire is more to forgive and to be unoffended than it is to take that on and to let it sit and let it simmer. Because we know that there's death back in Egypt. We know that there's death back in Egypt, and we know that there's life here in the Promised Land. And to be able to make it through, to be able to be led, and it does take, I say to make it through because it does take courage, it does take perseverance, it does take a daily reminding and an awareness of the strength and the love and the provision that God has already desired to plant in our lives. He is planting our feet and He's giving us the courage. He is the jetpack on our backs that will blast us to the other side if we just allow Him to. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be easy, like we talked about in the last video with the transformation process, but there is a destination. There is a destination that He is taking you towards. And like I said in the beginning, some of this is going to be a journey through eternity. But there will be a day, there is a destination as far as bitterness and as far as self-hatred and as far as trauma and identity issues and understanding His love, as far as those things go, there is an end game. There is an end date to that. And it's when Christ returns and establishes His kingdom on earth and rids the earth of every teal, of every bit of suffering, and we are there to reign and rule with him forever. You know, and I was thinking today, actually, I just want to mention this briefly, just about how reaching a destination in some of these areas, how we can kind of gauge ourselves. And I was thinking about what transformation is, or what it looks like to reach the other side, even in the midst of our failures, even in the midst of the times that we get it wrong and return to our vomit, so to speak. And my question for you is, do you understand God as a God of love? And if you do, how does that change in the midst of your failure? Does it change in the midst of your failure? Because it's easy to say that God is love and that he always loves us and that he adores us and delights in us and finds great joy in us. But when we're in the midst of our failure, and when we have experienced failure and we've experienced going back to the same sin that we just hate, who is he then to you? And I think that a significant mark of reaching the promised land in that area, and that could fall into self-hatred and understanding his love, self-forgiveness. But a key indicator that we've reached some sort of destination is when he remains full of grace and mercy and love, even in the midst of failures that we want to hate ourselves for. Even in the midst of that stuff, is he constant for you? So I've got a couple questions for you. I know I've asked a couple already. But in what ways has your journey with the Lord been a journey? I guess a little redundant, but oh well, deal with it. In what ways has it been a journey, and in what ways and in what areas do you feel like you've reached a destination? Do you feel like reaching a destination in some of these areas is even possible? Do you think it's a little bit of both? You know, what do you think about it? And I want to remind you that if you want to connect with us, we are on Facebook and Twitter, and we have a YouTube channel, obviously. And so subscribe to that and visit us on our website. And what else? You know, visit Jeremy Mangersheen's website and make sure that you stay up on his book, because this is what he's going to be talking about. So he's got a lot of wisdom and a lot of stuff to share from his own life and things that he's experienced, and he's just full of love and full of revelation. So make sure you stay up to date on that. And so let me see, make sure I got everything covered for you guys. Oh. Blah, 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 blah.
Purpose of what you here for. Reflect his image and show the world what he cares for. And I know it's alright, right, and you know it's your life, and we know the time's running out. Can't wait around, cause yeah.